What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Breaking Bet here on this Wednesday, August 28th. Labor Day weekend, a couple days away. We're approaching the NFL season, 8 days away from the kickoff. This is big news. I mean, Labor Day weekend to me is always the fun part. I think it's always been a myth that Labor Day weekend, Eric, is the only last weekend that you can wear white. I don't care. Johnny V is not a trend follower. He's a trend setter. But also, it signifies the end of the summer. Playoffs, the postseason race is just starting to heat up. And, of course, we got the NFL coming back here. And, obviously it's really exciting. But, first, how you doing, brother? Thanks for being here.
Doing well, my man. Appreciate it. Love hopping on with you. And I love that line about setting trends. We're not following them here. We're setting them. So let's do that.
That's the thing, right? I mean, listen, bro, not for nothing. The trends have come way before sports betting. I was doing the white pants, white T-shirts way before sports betting became legalized. My mom's like, "Oh, what are you doing? Labor Day was 3 months ago." I'm like, "Listen, Ma, I'm a trendsetter. I'm not a trend follower. That's what you raised." But anyway, Eric, we talked about little NFL awards last time out here on Monday. I think we came to a pretty good thesis of what we were looking at in terms of MVPs, Offensive Player of the Years, when to bet, maybe when to hold back, and then when to dive in. And obviously, we already touched on like passing leaders, rushing leaders, all that stuff. So one thing we have not touched on, which we're going to get into tonight, is the division winners, the conference winners, and the Super Bowl winners. Let's kick it off here with the AFC. We're going to start off in the AFC East. It's going to go. AFC East is interesting here, and we're pulling off of FanDuel. Now, obviously, whenever you're looking at your odds, always shop around. Books offer a lot of different prices. There's a lot of opportunities to get different numbers out there in these days in sports betting. So we got the Jets as a small favorite at plus 160, Buffalo plus 195. Miami plus 210 and New England plus 2,600. Eric, is this a chalk latte? Are we going with the Jets? Is the Bills' time over? Is Miami just not capable? And does Aaron Rodgers ride off into the sunset with an AFC East title and maybe a Super Bowl appearance?
Yeah, so I'll work backwards here. New England, worst team in football. I know that they're priced that way. I know people are making arguments for teams like New Orleans if they want to be down the board, Denver, even Las Vegas, but I make no bones about it. I have the New England Patriots entering the season as my last team in my NFL power ratings, and I 100% think that they're going to end up with the number one overall pick in 2025. Don't really need a big explanation, but I'm not sold on Gerard Mayo. Their defense, which was great last year, was only great because they had literally one of the best defensive minds ever in Bill Belichick operating that defense. Offensive line is abysmal, no skill players. Patriots are, to me, not even worth wasting another breath on. Miami's interesting because that offense is still going to hum, but I am bearish on their defense. They're really injured. They lost a lot of players. They're switching from the Vic Fangio system. And, of course, we know Tua Tagovailoa is limited. So I'm not going to make a case for Miami to win the East, but I do think they'll be in the mix for a playoff spot all year long. And then that brings us to the big dogs, the Jets and the Bills. Now, honestly, this is not a market I bet. I think if you want to bet any team, well, the Jets are plus money still. So it's not like you're laying a price on the Jets. If you were, I would say lay off that. I would give the slight nod to the Buffalo Bills to win the division, but the Jets have a clear path to being good. They play a much easier schedule. They obviously have one of the best quarterbacks of all time under center. They have a great defense, and they were able to win football games last year with literally the worst quarterback play possible. I'm still concerned about their offensive line. Garrett Wilson's a stud, and Breece Hall's a stud, but that's kind of really it there for that skill position spot for the Jets. So if they deal with any injuries, I'm not sure where Rodgers can be throwing the football. No money placed on it. I would say, though, I would give the Bills the slight edge. But talk to me, Johnny, if you've got something else. But you could tell me that either one is winning the division. I'm not batting an eye. I don't see it for Miami or New England. Absolutely not.
So for me, I definitely think the Jets are rightly priced as the favorite because this is it. This is do or die. You have Aaron Rodgers coming off a torn Achilles, and I think especially week one against the San Francisco defense, Nick Bosa chasing him around. He hasn't been on the field in a year. This guy took 4 snaps as the Jets quarterback. He doesn't even have a pass attempt. So I want to know, and I'm curious to see what he's going to be looking like moving around mobility-wise. But I think when it comes to the Jets, they have the best defense. You can make a case they have, I would say, the second best offense. I think Miami's got the best offense, but they definitely have the best quarterback when it comes to talent, skill, ability to play well. Josh Allen is obviously, Josh Allen might be more athletic, but I wouldn't put him better than Aaron Rodgers other than maybe a fantasy reason. And you touched on the schedule, which is something I want to go back to real quick. I'm trying to find it, but I can't. I actually like a ticket on the Jets to be the last undefeated team this year. Mm-hmm. If you look at their schedule, they're at San Francisco week 1. I think San Francisco ordinarily should win that game. I like the Jets to cover. But now looking at the fact that Trent Williams and the 49ers and Ayuk and the 49ers are not close to signing a contract extension, that game is right around the corner. And there is a real possibility that neither of those guys will be playing there. And Ayuk's a big loss, but they're outside of a quarterback, Trent Williams might be the biggest loss when it comes to non-quarterbacks. I mean, if he's not the biggest, he's one of the biggest. Trent Williams is the cornerstone of that offense, despite all the stars like Kittle, Ayuk, McCaffrey, Samuel, now Brock Purdy. Trent Williams creates so many opportunities for that offense. So if he's not out there, that's a huge problem. If Ayuk's not out there, that's a big problem. They're both not out there. I really don't like it. You saw what happened last year when Trent Williams didn't play. They lost 3 games in a row. They were missing Ayuk or Debo. And I think it's a problem. So I think if the Jets can get past that game, Eric, they have Tennessee, New England, Denver, Minnesota, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, New England for their first 8 games. That can be 8-0 if they get past San Francisco in week 1. And then they're home to Houston. That's week 9. I mean, that's not a gimme by any stretch, but it's a winnable game at home. Then they go to Arizona. Like, reasonably, the Jets could start 8-0 if they get past San Francisco week 1. I can't find the last undefeated. So if anybody comes up and finds it and drops it in the comments, that'd be awesome. I mean, I've been looking for it, but I think that's definitely a sign that I would go with the Jets as well. So, but I think in terms of the division, I don't trust anybody else. I think Miami for a sprinkle, for a little bit better of a price, is who I would take over Buffalo, though.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when it comes to the consideration of this, like straight up that the Buffalo Bills, like the fact that they have Josh Allen, and this is something that I saw circulating on Twitter and something that I was honestly guilty of. I used to think Josh Allen was overrated. And now somehow the narrative is entirely shifted, and Josh Allen is somehow underrated. Like everyone just harps on the turnovers, and of course that's not something you ever want to be known for, is, losing the football and, giving it to the other team. But I know obviously Buffalo lost a piece on defense, lost Stephon Diggs, etc. But at this point, and again, I know we're talking about one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, but the guy's coming off an Achilles injury. Whether or not it was on purpose, etc., he stunk in his last year in Green Bay. He was a mediocre, middle of the pack, below average quarterback in his last year in Green Bay. So you're asking for a lot from him. So I obviously still give the edge in terms of just strictly quarterback to the Buffalo Bills, but the Jets have the best roster, and you made a good case for their early season schedule. And again, like you could tell me right now that the Jets won the division, or you told me the Bills, like I'm not blinking an eye at it. Miami, I do think, is a fringe playoff team, but I think they still got to be able to beat these 2 big boys up top, and I don't know if they're able to do so, but I think that they will be competitive and make that division, or make that AFC playoff picture, very, very tight all season long.
Yeah, I do too. And I think really there's something to be said for what Rodgers is going to look like. And, honestly, listen, the roster for Buffalo is not that good. Like if Josh Allen has a bad year, they have absolutely no shot. Like they don't have a great defense anymore to cover them up. They lose Jordan Poyer. He goes down to Miami. Tre'Davious White's gone. That what was once a shutdown corner is no longer there. And I think, it's their front four is still good. They can still generate pressure from the front four. But I mean, to be honest, I'm not really looking at Buffalo as a team. Like I think their window's passed. If they won the division, it wouldn't surprise me. But I think this is definitely going to be all the way for the New York Jets if they stay healthy and Rodgers is even solid. He doesn't even have to be great, but if he's solid. And to be honest, I don't know where this I'm sorry. I'm looking for this thing. I can't find it. So
Found the
again, if
market.
anybody, you what?
I found the market. Last remaining undefeated team. Jets are 16-1.
Where is it?
Under win specials, all the way at the last thing under win specials.
In on what site?
FanDuel.
Win specials?
Win specials all the way to the right. And then all the way at the bottom, I'm seeing last undefeated team remaining.
My guy. Yeah, dude. I mean, I have to go through the schedules and, really do more homework on this, but just off first look, the Jets at 16-1 is a really, really interesting buy. So I think, that's something I might consider. I haven't looked at everybody's schedule for the first, 8 weeks. Realistically, you get the teams that go 8-9-0. So you have to have a path to at least go 7-0, at least, but more likely 8-9-0. After that, then it's, you're starting to charter. But all right, let's move on here to the AFC South. And, I think, Eric, I'll let you start here, but do you think Houston is just going to be the chalk everybody's talking about this year? Do you think there's a bump in the road? Do you think there's maybe a little bit expectation that falls on their head? Where are you going in the AFC South here?
Yeah, so like I mentioned the last 2 times we spoke, I'm bought in on the Texans. I'm all in. I generally like to fade those trendy teams like the Houston Texans are coming to the season, but I think that CJ Stroud could cement himself as a top 5 bona fide quarterback during the course of this year. And I do like them to win the AFC South. I'd like them to be a top 2 seed in the AFC as well. But the one thing I will say about this division is this division has such a wide range of outcomes because these are all teams that are intriguing, to say the least. Tennessee Titans at the bottom, entirely new system, filled up their roster with veterans instead of going for like a complete rebuild. Brian Callahan's going to have them throwing the football a lot more than he used to do it with Derrick Henry. So if Will Levis does have some smoke, they have some weapons to throw the football on, and they have some veterans on defense. So the Titans are a team that I do think they will play closer to their floor outcome, but their ceiling's high as hell. Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence figures it out. They have a good offense, a good front seven on defense, a horrible secondary. But if they could become a shootout winning style of team, if Trevor Lawrence, puts some of these things together, the Jaguars have a high ceiling. If Anthony Richardson stays healthy, the Colts have probably the second most complete roster in this division, and they'll be fighting for a playoff spot. So I can see the Colts having a high ceiling. And then, of course, the Houston Texans, I am bought into the hype. You can consider me sold, and I like them to run away with the division. But I do think that the Colts, Jaguars, and Titans, all of those teams, with the Colts before the Jaguars, Colts finishing second, are teams to monitor for making the Texans' life a little bit more difficult and also for the playoff picture.
So I'm conflicted on Houston, personally. I'm a big fan of what they're doing. I loved watching them last year. It was a joy. It really was. Me personally, I feel like they should be good. I feel like they're a team that should go far. And if they do, it won't surprise me. But something in the back of my head is telling me there is a chance that the unforeseen happens. And this is a team that regresses or doesn't reach the heights that everybody is talking about and think they're supposed to. Like, listen, it happens where a trendy team in their second year blossoms and becomes who we think they're going to be. It happens. But it also happens that it's the opposite. When you look at Houston, the first half of their schedule is relatively winnable. They have at Indy, they have the Bears, they have the Vikings, the Jags, the Bills, the Pats. At the Packers could be a tough game. But then the second half, this is where I think it could get away from them, especially if they have like a key injury. Not even necessarily CJ Stroud, but they're at the Jets. They're home to the Lions. They're at the Cowboys. They're home to the Titans. They're at the Jags. They're home to Miami. They're at KC. They're home to Baltimore. They're at Tennessee. That is a gauntlet of a second half of a schedule. So I think there is a realistic possibility that Houston, they could fall flat in the second half. A couple things go wrong. Like we've seen it a million times before. So I think at almost even money, it's almost not even worth it. I will say this, though. If Anthony Richardson can step up and take that next leap, I do really like Indianapolis as a team moving forward. But like you said, with the wide range of outcomes, dude, to be honest, you look at Tennessee, and I'm glad you brought that up because they don't have a bad roster. Levis showed a lot of competitiveness. He showed a lot of talent late last year. You got Calvin Ridley. You got D-Hop. Pollard, still not bad. You got Tajay Spears. You have Chigakonkwo. You sign L'Jarius Sneed in your secondary. You have Jeffrey Simmons, one of the best interior linemen in football. So to say Tennessee can't compete even in a new system, I don't buy that. A plus 950, that's a good deal. I mean, listen, the first part of their season is a little up in the air. They're at the Bears, then they got the Jets, the Packers, the Dolphins, the Colts, the Bills, the Lions. But after that Lions game, then they got New England, Chargers, Vikings, Texans, Commanders, Jags, Bengals, Colts, Jags, Texans. I mean, that's a winnable game. I think if they can kind of weather the storm through those first 7 weeks and even be 3-4, I think we could be talking about a team that could win 9 games. I think it's feasible if things go their way. I think this Tennessee team is definitely one that I would keep my eye on a week to week, especially if Levis makes that jump that a lot of people think he can.
Agreed, and I think you made a good point. Like if you're betting the Titans, I would look to bet the tail outcomes being playoffs, alternate win total, AFC South, rather than just baseline, etc. So I agree. I think the Titans do have sneaky, at least solid potential, to say the least.
And I think honestly, there is a good chance that they start out slow. They could easily lose at the Bears and the Jets and the Packers and the Dolphins. Maybe they go 1-3 there, then their odds are looking like toast. But you never know. And then, you get them live. I think this is up in the air. Jacksonville, I'm just kind of waiting on. I'm not going to buy Jacksonville until I see it. I don't care what their schedule looks like, good or bad. I need to see it from them. If not now, when? All right, let's go to the AFC North, one of the most intriguing divisions in football. We got Baltimore at a plus 145, then Cincy 165, then Cleveland 450, then Pittsburgh 750. I'll start this one. I think, to be honest, Cincinnati is the pick that I'm going with. The Jamar Chase situation concerns me, where Zach Taylor says, yeah, dude, he's going to be out there week 1, and then 5 minutes later turns around, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't like that, but it is against New England, a game they should win. But for me, when guys sit out, it's not about can they have a good season? Can they be an impact player, especially a guy like Jamar Chase, who is one of the most impact players in football, but it's the elevated injury risk from not getting the practice reps consistently. You're not in somewhat game shape. And I know he's been practicing somewhat, but still it's a bit of a concern. But that aside, I still think Cincinnati is the better bet. Cleveland at 450, though, is appealing. Last year, they got hit with injuries and still managed to be a team that made the playoffs. Deshaun Watson is not the guy from Houston. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if it's mentally. I don't know if him missing half a season or a season, completely derailed him, Eric. But he doesn't even have to be the top 5 guy he used to be. He just has to be 16th or 17th best quarterback. Let the defense do its thing. The running back situation, Nick Chubb should be back at some point. You have Amari Cooper, now Jerry Jeudy and Njoku. I think Cleveland's a nice sleeper. And when you look at Baltimore, their first 6 games, that is a tough run. They have to go at Kansas City week 1, a game I do think they can win, but probably will cover 3. They're home to the Raiders. That should be a win. At Dallas, home to Buffalo, at the Bengals, then they're home to Washington, then they're at Tampa, then they're at Cleveland. And then, it softens up a bit in the second half. But reasonably, a couple bad bounces, Eric, they could start out 1-5.
Mm-hmm. So this is, of all the divisions, this is the one I'm least confident in projecting. I agree with you on the Bengals that of healthy Joe Burrow. This defense was horrible last year, so you could only expect them to regress to the mean, which is a good thing in this case, to play closer to league average. Lou Anarumo is a great defensive coordinator. Obviously, Joe Burrow is great, and this Jamar Chase thing is obviously not ideal, but he is absolutely electric. But I think you made a good point with the Ravens. this roster is not as good as it was last year, and the roster wasn't even great defensively last year. And Mike McDonald was just such a good defensive coordinator that he was able to scheme these lackluster players into ideal situations. And then now you lose Mike McDonald, you lose some of that actual talent there, and you have an offensive line that just really isn't great at all. So I agree that the Ravens could be a team that just simply botches here. But my most intriguing team is what you were mentioning, the Cleveland Browns. Number 1 defense in EPA last year. Jim Schwartz, year 2 of the system. Good offensive line. Adding Jerry Jeudy to another skill player there. Obviously, Chubb, he'll hopefully be back by week 5, 6, maybe even 4. Hopefully, I know he has to miss at least 4 with the PUP. But Deshaun Watson needs to show literally anything. And at this point, though, I'm not confident that he can do so. Jameis Winston being their backup is amazing because if they can let the ball fly, Stefanski's a great offensive coach. If they can scheme him into some easy situations, if Watson clearly isn't who he was, and every point of evidence, every piece of evidence is pointing to him not being that good. So I is on the Cleveland Browns to be in this mix and also be in the mix for a wild card all season long. And then I'll talk Steelers, and all I'll say is I'm not fading Mike Tomlin. No, he's never been a guy to fade. Obviously, he hasn't had a losing season. They have the 2 disgustingly awful quarterbacks, but somehow he's going to win 9 games. I don't know how he's going to do it, but he'll pull it out of his ass somehow. I agree with him. The Bengals probably being the better bet. The Ravens probably having a lower floor and a better chance of hitting that floor. But I think the Browns are a team where my eye is just continuously on the Cleveland Browns because their roster really is good, but they need to get something out of Watson. If they can't, if Winston can get any sort of mojo going, I think the Cleveland Browns are a very, very good football team.
And, what's interesting is the fact that Cleveland, I think with the schedule they have, it's just so doable. I mean, they have Dallas week 1. They have at Jaguars. They got the Giants. They got the Raiders, Commanders, Philly, Bengals, Ravens, Chargers, Saints, Steelers, Broncos, Steelers, Chiefs, Bengals, Dolphins, Ravens is a tough four-game finish. But, I mean, by that point, they can be in position where they might only have to win 2 games in order to get that division. So I think Cleveland at 450 is probably the best bang for your buck. I would like to see what the situation with Baltimore is and definitely Cincinnati because, I think Cincinnati with the Jamar Chase show, that is very scary. But I think Cleveland right now is probably the best bang for a buck and just think that Kevin Stefanski is going to find a way for Deshaun Watson just to be average because that's all they need. All right. Probably the least fun division is the AFC West. You got the Chiefs at -270, Chargers plus 390, Raiders plus 1,000, and you got Denver at plus 2,000. I mean, listen, I wouldn't lay 270 with the Chiefs just because, an injury happens and then, that's it. But, if you were going to lay 270 with a team, I think I would lay it with Kansas City in that case. I think it's obviously an anchor for people that do division parlays. I mean, those are always fun. But I truly don't see any team that's going to probably come within 3 games of Kansas City when it's all said and done. I don't know the health status of Justin Herbert. You got to confirm with me, does he have a foot injury? That's kind of been a problem. If that's the case, the Chargers, that's a really bad look. And their roster is not that great. The Raiders, they have no quarterback. The Broncos are just not good. I mean, for a wild card, if Bo Nix could be good with Sean Payton and he can start his career off hot, but I don't see how anybody's going to even come within 3 games of KC.
I'm in 100% agreement. I think KC runs away with it as expected. I think, like you said, too, Chargers, I think, are still a year away from being good because the roster, like you said, just isn't up to par. I have Denver finishing 3rd, Las Vegas finishing 5, and this just comes down to coaching. The Broncos have arguably a bottom 2 roster in football, like 100%. They could be just as bad as the Patriots from a just pure roster standpoint. But Sean Payton is a great coach. He knows exactly what he has, and he wanted Bo Nix. So I think that they have the edge over the Raiders in terms of just seeding because the Raiders, like you said, have no quarterback. Interim head coaches normally don't do well. And the Raiders' run to end the season, a lot of that was due to a lot of fortunate turnover luck, and that stuff is not sticky year over year. So just, I guess, a tidbit, I would, if you were doing like an exact order, I would go KC, LAC, Denver, Vegas in the AFC West. I think Denver is better than Las Vegas. I think they're both stink, but I think Denver will have more wins at the end of the year than the Las Vegas Raiders.
I think even Vegas could beat out LAC. I think LAC could be bad, especially if Herbert's not healthy, like at all. Like we saw last year when Herbert missed, and you remember that game. And listen, obviously it's a midseason hire, but like Antonio Pierce, this guy wants to stay the coach. He's a player's guy. He was a very good player. He's a Super Bowl champion. He knows how to get a lot out of his guys. He knows how to get them believing, even if they're not necessarily worth believing in. But that's one of the things he can do. And Jim Harbaugh had a lot of success as a coach in the NFL, of course. But I don't know. I feel like there's disaster looming over the Chargers this year, and I feel like the Raiders could be half decent, could be a 7-win team, which honestly 7 wins might be the second best team in this division, but we will see. Moving over here, NFC East. Let's start it off. Eagles -140, Dallas +175, Washington 11-1, Giants 16-1. Eric, I think the Eagles win this division. I think they win probably by 2 games. You had Dallas had 12 wins last year. But if you look at the Cowboys, bro, their defense is a disaster. Diggs is coming off a torn Achilles or a torn ACL. They just lost. Who did they just lose? I'm bugging.
Ron Bland.
Yeah, DeRon Bland. Sorry, DeRon Bland. All the pick sixes last year. So their secondary is gonna be in shambles. Obviously, you got Parsons. You lose Leighton Vander Esch. Obviously, he's not there anymore. I don't know if he retired coming into this year or last year. What was that?
I think he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming into this year.
With the neck injuries, you have DeMarcus Lawrence. But unfortunately, I don't think their defense is going to be good enough. I don't think their offense is good. I don't think Dalvin Cook is going to be a notable signing. I could be wrong. Maybe Cook has some left in the tank and he could be a solid producer for all we know, but I would probably say no. Wide receivers past CeeDee Lamb. I mean, you have Brandon Cooks, who's solid. You got Jake Ferguson, but outside of that, there's not much. I don't believe in Dak Prescott. Washington is high variance, but I mean, I see this being Philadelphia if they stay healthy.
Yeah, if you tune into the show, past episodes, I'm a big Birds believer this year. If you are first time tuning in, hi, I'm a big Birds believer this year. I think that they'll finish with the best record in football. I think they'll run away with this division. I also have the Dallas Cowboys not even making the postseason this season. I think that Dallas is really, like you mentioned, these injuries and just the overall team outlook. I am very bearish on the Dallas Cowboys. You made a great point about the Commanders being a high variance team because that's exactly what they are. Of course, we'll see what Jaden Daniels looks like in game action. And their offensive line is poor. Their wide receiver room is poor. But you said it's a varying situation. If Jaden Daniels is an animal, this team could really pick up. And we're talking about last year. This was the worst defense in football last year. And now they have a defensive-minded head coach. They put a ton of resources in the free agent market to get players like a Frankie Louvu, Jeremy Chin. I know that their new head coach, Dan Quinn, took a lot of players from Dallas, brought them over to defense for the defensive unit as well. So I think Washington could sneak in as the final playoff seed, but they're not going to contend with the Eagles in the division. I think this is a runaway for Philadelphia. And then the New York Giants, I think that they'll be a 6 to 7 win team, just simply because Dable is a good coach. They have a relatively easy schedule, and their front 7 is good. But I think that we'll be seeing Daniel Jones's last year as the Giants starting quarterback, and not going to even waste more breath on them. I'm all in on Philly being one of the best teams in football this upcoming season.
I like the point you made because, sometimes when you have those teams that are that are exciting and they're high variance, in all likelihood, they're not going to, like a Washington, they're not going to win the division unless Philly suffers cluster injuries, Jalen Hurts, God forbid, but you want to get in on them. And I think the perfect opportunity is to make the playoffs. I mean, the price isn't great, but plus 310 for Washington to be a make the playoffs team, I feel like is doable. Like we said, Dan Quinn's got experience getting teams to the playoffs as head coaches. Washington's defense, they got some guys. They just have to be middle of the pack. Jaden Daniels can be great. You have Terry McLaurin. You have Brian Robinson. Maybe Austin Eckler has something left in the tank. I personally think Austin Eckler was hurt last year. That's why he looked slow. I don't know if Austin Eckler is the guy that we had 3 years ago, but he could still be a good producer to go along with Brian Robinson. So, there is a path for Washington in a weak NFC to make the playoffs. So I think 3-1, a little bit more, is definitely worth a sprinkle here in this case. But yeah, Philadelphia should be running away with this division if all things are equal. So, minus 140 is a price that I would lay. Then we're moving on here. This is definitely one of the most interesting divisions. That's going to be the NFC South. Atlanta's a minus 145 favorite. Tampa's plus 290. New Orleans 550 and Carolina 11-1. Eric, we'll work backwards here. Carolina, no. New Orleans, highly likely, no. There's not a lot of talent in this team. Derek Carr actually had a good year, for like a mid-tier guy. Like Derek Carr, I think, had 25 tutties to 8 picks. He was very solid. Kamara, I think without Drew Brees, it's just a guy that has not looked like what he was, and it's the different offense. The defense isn't as good as it used to be. That defense used to be really, really shut down. Outside of Olave, they don't really have reliable pass catchers that I would say is something to fear. I think Rashid Shaheed is interesting. He's a deep ball guy, but I think New Orleans is a team that could flirt with 8-9 wins if things go right for them, make the playoffs. So really it comes down between Atlanta and Tampa. I grew up a Falcons fan for over 2 decades. I know this team as well as anybody. They like to do this, Eric. They like to lead you on and tease you like this is their year. It's not. This is a flawed roster. This team has a couple stars highlighting it, and people think that's enough. It's not. Atlanta, you got Matt Judon, great. They haven't had a legitimate number 1 pass rusher since John Abraham left. They got a good season out of Vic Beasley, but like a cornerstone, I don't know if Matt Judon's going to be a 15-sack guy. I think Atlanta would be lucky to have him get double-digit sacks this year. I really do. You sign Justin Simmons. That's a nice pickup. You have Simmons, Bates, AJ Terrell. That's a really nice secondary. I get worried about the linebacking core. Grady Jarrett's still an absolute savage. The line, little worried about it. And most importantly, what is Kirk Cousins going to look like? Just tore his Achilles. 36 years old. We're talking about the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. Kirk Cousins is in that boat, baby. I think everybody's anointed Atlanta. They have a tendency to disappoint you in ways that you can't even imagine. I've lived through many of them. And for the value, I just don't think it's there. Tampa is almost 3-1. They played well last year. Baker looked good. Even though the defense isn't as great as it used to be, I still think this is a team that should be, in my mind, the division winner if everybody stays healthy. I think Atlanta's only there price-wise because of what could potentially happen.
Yeah, and I love hearing it right from the horse's mouth, Johnny, because I love that you're a realist fan talking about Atlanta, because I have the same viewpoint without having the same background in terms of the emotional attachment aspects for the Falcons. I think that, like you said, they're a team that's literally they're going to let you down. They have clearly no organizational alignment based on their signing of Kirk Cousins and then drafting of Michael Penix. They're trying to cover their tracks by trading for Judon, signing Justin Simmons, who are good football players. Don't get me wrong, but this is a team that you could tell me they won. That there's no team. I should rephrase it this way: there's no game, even though they play one of the easiest schedules in football, that you sit there and say, okay, the Falcons are winning this football game. There's just none of them. I'm sure they're going to win games, of course, but it's never going to be let's go Atlanta Falcons. This one's a shoe-in type of win. I don't see that at all. The Saints are getting a lot of hate, and I see it because Dennis Allen is a bad head coach, great defensive mind still, bad head coach. Derek Carr is a check down king who can't win, big games. That's a proven fact just from his career. He is who he is at this point. Nothing is changing. Their offensive line is also very mediocre, if not just flat out bad. But the only thing I will disagree with is I think the Buccaneers could really be a team that's worth looking to fade in the alternate win total market. The shot to Cleve TA on this one because I was reading some of his stuff. And the Buccaneers fit a very kind of typical mold of a team that clearly overexceeded expectations last year, but they were not elite, nor were they at the bottom of the barrel in the NFL. And they got worse on defense, like you mentioned. They lost some of their better players. They have a new offensive coordinator this year. And Baker Mayfield, like, are we really just going to buy into the fact that Baker Mayfield is all of a sudden like a good NFL quarterback? Like, he's obviously not horrible, but I'm not ready to make those claims. So I think that the Bucs are a team I'd actually personally have faded and would look to fade. And I will touch on the Panthers briefly because I do think they're certainly a year away from being a year away. Like, they're obviously not good, but Bryce Young having negative expectations coming into this year can only be a good thing. You know, when you have the spotlight, the flashings, everything's on you, you're more going to be more prone to probably botching. But when you have this offseason, you know, you didn't get hurt last year. Dave Canales is an offensive kind of guy. They don't have great skill players. They don't have a great offensive line. I'm not going to sit here and say they're a good football team, but those under the radar teams are some teams you should kind of like keep in the back of your mind. Like, I'm not saying again they're making the playoffs or winning this division. I will absolutely not go that far. But I could see Carolina, winning a game in New Orleans or at home against the Falcons, where everyone's, survivor pick is on the Falcons this week, and this Panthers team just beats them because they're not horrible. Like, that's how I kind of view it. But just roster wise, I do lean Falcons, but this is not a price I would touch remotely. So might as well move on here because I wouldn't touch the Falcons. I wouldn't put my own money on the Saints. And I actually have faded the Buccaneers with my money. So I'm just going to see if one of the Saints or Falcons takes it home. And whoever does it, I'm going to have no action on.
All right, so here's the deal. Tampa Bay, I don't think their roster is that bad. I don't
think it's that bad either. But I think that they're just not good enough to really elevate. And I think that they're a team that would play more to their floor outcome rather than like hit another ceiling outcome like they did last season.
But they don't have to hit their ceiling. Because let me tell you why. Tampa Bay is a team, indeed, that has a schedule that's relatively easy. I mean, they have a couple games here. I mean, look, you have the Baltimore, Atlanta, Kansas City, San Francisco in the middle of the season. That's a tough stretch. Atlanta, they can win. I don't think they can win Baltimore, KC, or San Francisco. So you got 3 losses there. They're at Detroit. I think they could give Detroit a run for their money, but ultimately that's a game I think they lose. So that's 4 losses. They're home to Philly. They can beat Philly. I think they split with Atlanta. Home to Washington week 1, I think that's a game they can win. I think Jaden Daniels' first game career, that's a toss-up game. They're home to Denver. It's a game they can win. Then this is their second half. This is why I think a division is in their grasp. They're at the Giants, at the Panthers, home to the Raiders, at the Chargers. They're at the Cowboys, winnable game in my opinion. They're home in Carolina, home in New Orleans. That is a very easy schedule. And a lot of their tough games this year are on the road. The only hard opponents they have on the road is probably Dallas, Kansas City, and Detroit. I think when you look at their schedule, it's very reasonable to say, hey, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a team that can win 9 games, and that could do it for the NFC South. Whereas, Atlanta's schedule is easy, and their second half is easier, but they start with the Steelers at home week 1. That could definitely be a loss. They're at the Eagles. They're home to the Chiefs. They're home to the Saints. They're home to the Bucs. They're at the Panthers, but then they're come home to the Seahawks. They're at the Bucs. Like I said, I think they split. Then they're home to the Cowboys. I think they split with the Saints. And then, their last 6 weeks is relatively easy, where I think they should probably go at least 4-2. But they reasonably could have a lot of losses in the first half of their season. So, if they rack up a lot of losses, if they rack up like 5-6 losses in the first 12 games, then, this is – I think it's an opportunity where they're in trouble.
Yeah, someone has to win this division. All mediocre teams at best, and someone has to pull it out. So I guess we shall say.
We shall see. We shall see. All right, let's get to the NFC North. I think this is a division I've been looking forward to. You got Detroit at plus 130, then Green Bay at 2-1, then the Bears at plus 340, then Minnesota at plus 850. I'll let you start this one off.
Yeah, so spoke about this when we were chatting last week. I think that the Bears are not a team that I'm really interested in backing. I think that they have they're playing more like Madden than having like a big, actually like structured team. Offensive line is weak. Yes, you have 3 good skill players in DJ Moore, Odunze, and Keenan Allen, but being able to disperse the football with all 3 of those guys is probably going to be more difficult than expected. Obviously, the major spotlight is on Caleb Williams, and he obviously shows athletic flashes that most people are incapable of showing. But yeah, and this defense is solid, but I think the Bears are going to be like a fight into like the playoff potential kind of team, that they'll be in the thick of that race. But I do not have them as a playoff team. I really was intrigued by the Vikings until the JJ McCarthy news. Now, even with that being said, even though Darnold probably would have played 1 or 2 games, but that's actually not even a foregone conclusion based on how things were going. JJ could have been the week 1 starter. But at this point, we really know what we get from Darnold. KOC, hell of a head coach, and Brian Flores has been great on the defensive coordinator side since he made stop being an HC and just been a DC. So I think that those 2 teams will be in the mix. But when it comes to just winning the division, I think it's the Lions, and that's that. I think the Packers are a team where everyone needs to pause the brakes on. They're very good, and they can win 9-10 games. They're not Super Bowl good. Jordan Love is a very good quarterback, but he is still flawed. He's not like a can't miss, like, oh my God, he's amazing. Like, Jordan Love has still shown the propensity to make a couple of, bad throws, to be a little bit unaware in the pocket. So he is, again, he's a very talented quarterback. But if you think the Packers are going to leapfrog the Lions and be like a Super Bowl contender, you're essentially hoping that Jordan Love is like as good as like a CJ Stroud type of player. And I don't think that there's there. I think there's still a tier separating those 2 kinds of young quarterbacks. Stroud, of course, being a true sophomore in love with that, couple of years sitting on that bench while he was learning, and last year being his first full go. So to me, it's Lions or bust. Their defense was abysmal last year, and if they made acquisitions to improve that defensive unit, and if we see more of a league average compared to a bottom, 5 unit from that defense at times, you're looking at a just complete football team. Clearly has an identity, clearly knows what they're doing, running back the same coordinators, head coach, just except with better players this upcoming season. I think it's the Lions win this division. I think they're a top 3 seed in the NFC, and I don't really, I could stop right there.
Yeah, I think, listen, at the end of the day, I looked at this Green Bay schedule. I think Green Bay, much like the Houston Texans, but even probably more likely to have the regression where, from the NFC side, they're the trendy pick. People are like, oh, well, they have a good team. They went into Dallas and absolutely cock-slapped them last year. Jordan Love is going to take steps. Okay, I understand it. But now let's be honest here with ourselves in year 2. They have a very difficult schedule, and they have a lot of clumped games where it could pose problems. They have the Niners, Dolphins, Lions towards the end of the season. They have Texans, Jaguars, Lions, Bears right before that Niners game starts. They start with the Eagles in Brazil. They play the Colts. The Colts is no gimme. They're at the Titans. We don't know what the Titans look like this year. The Vikings, they probably run through. They're at the Rams. They're home to the Cardinals. Like, there's some of these games where we look at their schedule and say, oh, they should win that game, but they can lose. Like, Arizona is one of those teams that can go in and beat anybody, anywhere, anytime. I've talked about it. Arizona is maybe the highest variance team in the NFL. So I think Green Bay can see a regression. They have a very difficult schedule. And listen, if they win 11, 12 games, they earned it because they had a very hard schedule, in my opinion. Now, when you look at Detroit, they have a very difficult schedule. And I'm talking about somebody who has survivor pools, Circus Survivor again. And I've looked their schedule up and down, and I said, wow, I don't think they have one true gimme on this schedule. Even the middling teams can cause a problem. The Rams, the Bucks, the Vikings probably are the easiest of opponent. The Titans might be easy, but this is a team that has a very difficult schedule. But I think Detroit really only needs 11 wins to get this division. I think 11 wins is probably like a guaranteed division unless something else happens that's unforeseen. So realistically, if they went 11-6, I think they have it. I think Detroit is going to be one of the top teams in the NFL this year. I think I actually like them better to win the NFC over the Niners. Plus 550. We're going to get into that in a little bit. I think Detroit is for real this year. I don't love Dan Campbell, to be honest. I don't like how he runs his offense. I don't like how Ben Johnson was running the offense last year. But I think in terms of the talent on offense, they have it. I think the defense is a little suspect, but this is a defense that just has to be like middle of the pack. They're not going to be a San Francisco type of defensive unit. They just have to be average. I think Detroit is destined for a lot of big things this year, and plus 130 is a pretty solid price for the division.
In agreement. I don't agree with the Ben Johnson, Dan Campbell conversation.
Not many do. But also, I'm a guy talking from Amon-Ra, where I was sick of seeing Amon-Ra get 5 or 6 targets in the first half last year, and they do get 3 in the second half, even in a competitive game. So, all right, last one in the NFC. It's the West. It's the Niners minus 140, Rams plus 330, Seahawks 7-1, Cardinals 13-1. Eric, I love the Rams. I'm a big Matthew Stafford guy, but their defense is atrocious. We also know what the Niners do to the Rams every time they play head up in the regular season, and it's never good. Arizona, I'm excited to watch this year just for entertainment purposes. I don't think they can win the division this year. So really leave San Francisco and Seattle. I think Seattle is going to be appealing. I think there's a lot of winnable games on the Seahawks schedule this year. I think there is a playoff path. I think there is a path for them to win maybe 10 games. If Mike McDonald can get everything, the way it was in Baltimore. They have pieces on defense. They have pieces on offense. I don't think they can compete with San Francisco. I think this Trent Williams and Ayuk situation is going to get squared away. If it didn't, and it bled into middle of the season, a la Le'Veon Bell, or the whole season, different story. But assuming Trent Williams and Ayuk are back, I don't know how the 49ers, don't win this game by several games.
So I think it will be closer because I have my eye on as a team as a sleeper here. Now I have the Niners winning the division, but I do think it will come down to a little bit closer than like we were saying with the NFC East as well as the AFC West. But the Seattle Seahawks are a team I'm very intrigued in this season. I already spoke volumes about how I feel about Mike McDonald and how his loss is going to be really truly felt throughout the Ravens organization. And I think that obviously that loss for the Ravens is now a massive major gain for Seattle. I also like this new offense that they've installed with their new OC, whose name is escaping me right this second. But I think that we're going to see a lot more tempo with those 3 wide receivers they still currently have, and a big uptick in that efficiency, as well as Ken Walker in the run game. So I have the Seahawks finishing second. The Rams I have missing the playoffs. You mentioned this defense. It's already bad, and there's minimal depth on either side of the ball still. So if they deal with injuries, it's going to be really hard for them to overcome. Like, they're losing Aaron Donald. Like, that guy was the best defensive player potentially in history. Like, not having that guy on your defense now completely changes everything. Like, you're so used to having this guy garnering all this attention is now gone. Then the Cardinals, I think they could be a fun team, but I still think that they're a year away from being a year away. They, I think, like we talked about on last show, the Kyler Marv connection should be apparent early and often. That should be great, but that defense is really just abysmal. I think the Niners win a close division race with the Seattle Seahawks coming in second and going to some win totals. Seattle Seahawks overwins his bet, alternate overwins his bet, and also sprinkle some exact wins on 9 and 10 for the Seattle Seahawks. I think that they are going to give the Niners the best run for their money of any team in the West, and I think that they're a playoff team this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Seattle is definitely capable of being a playoff team. I just think, the schedule is a little bit too hard to be like a 11-game winner, 12-game winner, and I think more so The fact is, what's going to really hurt them is when they get swept by the 49ers this year in the regular season. Like, those are games you have to win if you want to win. And quite frankly, matchup-wise, 1v1, team versus team, I don't think San Francisco is going to lose to Seattle unless, like, some drastic injuries happen for them. So that's where I think San Francisco minus 190 is worth it. Just under $2 short. But, it's going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
AFC winner. Okay. So now we're starting to get into it here. The AFC, I think this is a conference that all starts and revolves around one thing: who can beat the Kansas City Chiefs? Because if you don't beat them, it's going to be them winning the conference yet again. You look at Kansas City's odds at 350, then it's Baltimore 550, Bengals 750, Texans 8-1, 8.5 for the Jets, 9 for the Bills, 10 for Miami, 17 for Cleveland, and then so on and so forth. So I think for me, if I'm not going Kansas City here, I don't think Baltimore is going to do it. I think, honestly, Baltimore is probably not as good as we think. And even with the addition of Derrick Henry, I just don't know if it's going to make enough of a difference. Cincinnati is always the team that I circle because Cincinnati is the one team that's consistently had success in the AFC dealing with the Chiefs. Joe Burrow has their number. I think 750 for the Bengals is definitely the direction I would head in, Eric. If I'm looking at other teams, there's only two I would take. The Jets at plus 850. I think their defense can do it. And if Rodgers is right, Rodgers is right. I wouldn't circle Cleveland. I think Cleveland can make it far enough. I just don't think at this juncture in his career, Deshaun Watson is capable of delivering a game like this. I think Cleveland's a team worth keeping your eye on. But I would say if I'm picking two teams in the AFC other than to beat the Chiefs, it will be Cincy and it will be the Jets.
Yeah, I don't disagree whatsoever. I mean, like I've said before, this is literally a Super Bowl or bust year for the New York Jets. So if you are drank the Kool-Aid and you're all in on the Jets, you might as well be sprinkling it across the board. Or you could just hope they lose their week 1 game against San Francisco and then try to get a better price in week 2. If that's possible, because like Johnny outlined before, their next schedule after that first game is something that looks like to be in the Jets' favor. I'm going to be boring though, and until I know, like you said, like Joe Burrow is currently the guy to be able to beat Patrick Mahomes, and now we have Buffalo, who hasn't been able to do it, now has a worse roster. You would be hard pressed to expect them to do so this season. They could not do so in past seasons. But I'm not betting this preseason by any means. I would hope it's like last year, like I talked about on the last show, where the Chiefs, are looking mortal at times. Their number gets inflated, and you bet it then. I have the Kansas City Chiefs making the Super Bowl, and I know it's square. I know it's boring, etc. I don't care. Give me the Chiefs.
Fair point. I like the idea too. Maybe wait a little bit. You're not really capturing, salivating value at plus 350 for them right now to be winning the AFC. Like I said, if we're going to bet other teams, personally, I think I'll just take a stab on Cincinnati just because, I just don't see anybody else beating them other than maybe the Jets. The Ravens, Texans, I don't really love to beat Kansas City. Overall, I'd probably wait. I'm not rushing to get into this market. There's always times where teams go in cold stretches, and there's times to buy, and this is the thing we're talking about. NFC.
Start us off.
Start it off, baby. Start it off.
Philadelphia Eagles. I'm all in. Like, that's the thing. Like, right? Like, obviously, like, these opinions are subject to change as time goes on. With that being said, no football has been played. No injuries have accumulated. Nothing has happened to take me off my horse where I'm on the Eagles preseason. You can call me, like, viewers, you can catch me slipping, and you can see the Eagles not, doing well, and you can talk all your shit. I'm all for the shit talking, but I'm Eagles preseason to do the damn thing. I will change my opinion based on new information and new data, as everybody should do in the world of not just sports betting and life in general. And presented with new information, you should use that to change your opinion on literally anything. And until this kicks off, I'm in on the Eagles, all in on the Eagles.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, if you've noticed between the AFC and the NFC, it's just disgusting. There's no depth. There's no parity. It's top heavy. It's the top 8 teams, maybe. I mean, in the NFC, it's even worse because if you look at it, San Francisco, Detroit, Philly, then the other teams is going to be Green Bay, Dallas, Atlanta, Rams, Bears, Seahawks, Bucks, and then it's the garbage. None of those teams really have a shot. Like maybe Green Bay has a shot to win the NFC. I don't think Dallas or Atlanta does. I don't think the Rams do. I don't think the Bears do. I don't think the Seahawks do. So you're really picking between San Fran, Detroit, and Philly. I don't think Philly's going to win. I don't love Philly. I think there's just something about – I think there's something about Sirianni I just don't love. I think the loss of Jason Kelce is going to be huge. I think, the Phillies going to win a lot of games in the regular season, kind of like they did a couple years ago, but I don't buy it. I think the Kelce loss is going to be astronomical because he does a lot more than just block. He's basically he's another quarterback out there, was able to identify coverages and make changes and call audibles and stuff like that. So I don't think Philly really is something that I would buy. They do have defensive pieces, but I still think they're beatable on defense. San Francisco, obviously the chalk latte. But I think their window's closing, San Francisco. And listen, Chiefs, Niners, it's obviously so redundant. It's not that I love them, but I think there's a path for them. That's why I'm going to go Detroit at plus 550. I like the number to win the NFC. I think the defense is definitely worse than San Fran, and I would probably give the edge in defense to Philly. But I just think they're so well coached and they're so resilient and they believe they can do it that Detroit really can win the NFC. And like you said, like if new information comes to light, I will be changing my opinion. But right now in this top-heavy NFC where there's realistically only 3 teams that can actually make the Super Bowl from this side, I think it's the Detroit Lions. Give me them to make it, and we'll see if there's any adjustments throughout the year.
So the one thing I will say is just on the Niners front, it is so difficult for a team to get to the apex and then lose and then make it back there the next year in the Super Bowl. So them doing so would be like an outlier type of situation. So not saying it's impossible, but just keep that in the back of your mind. Do some digging into some data, look at some teams, and you'll notice that once you get there and you lose, obviously, it's always hard to get there, but when you get there and lose, it's actually very, very difficult to get back. So just keep in mind for the 49ers that, yes, the roster is great, loaded, etc., but going from runner-up to then competing in it again, that is more of an anomaly, outlier type of situation rather than, the talent aside, that historically is just not the – that doesn't happen often historically.
I completely understand it, but when we're looking at it, the only thing that I think can really stop themselves is themselves. The schedule is hard. I said that. I think that's probably a huge issue, but I just don't see much depth in the NFC. I mean, maybe you catch them on a bad week and a wild card team goes and knocks them out. I think realistically, it'd probably be Detroit as a 1 or a 2 seed.
I agree.
Obviously, nowadays, the 1 seed is the only one that gets the bye, so I don't think they're going to be getting a bye. But if they're the 2 seed and I think they play the 7, who knows who the 7 is going to be, right? I mean, maybe the 7 is a Seattle, and Seattle has a good week and knocks them out. It's definitely possible, right? But I think when it comes to teams that I like the most, I'd probably – start off preseason with Detroit just because I don't love Philly, and I think San Francisco is beatable. And I think when you match up San Fran and Detroit, the Lions are a team that can win. They collapsed last year. They should have won. They completely choked. Listen, maybe a Green Bay surprises, or maybe the Rams somehow sneak in and are able to dethrone the Lions. I don't think that'll happen. Who knows, bro? Maybe even the Bears can make the 7 seed and show something. Caleb has a great year, a lot of weapons, good defense. Who knows? But I think right now, I think there's just too much up in the air about these wild cardish teams for me to love them.
And I'm in agreement.
Let's get the Super Bowl, wrap this thing up. We got some pretty interesting Super Bowl odds. I mean, Eric, if you had give me, instead of picking me the winner, just because, I haven't really made an official decision. I have a couple teams I like. Give me 2 teams from each conference that you think have a realistic chance of winning.
100%. And I will preface this again by saying future portfolios are exactly that, portfolios. Like you can bet X team now and then get a better price on Y team and then Z team and have 3 teams to win the Super Bowl by the time the Super Bowl is coming. If one of them are in it and you have good line value, that's all you can ask for. NFC, I am interested in the Philadelphia Eagles and the Detroit Lions to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Those are 2 teams I totally see getting there. In the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs, of course. And I consider me Kool-Aid drank the Houston Texans.
Okay. All right. Well, for me, AFC, I think the Chiefs, it's going to be hard to beat them. Chiefs, Bengals, and if I throw a third team, it's going to be the Jets. And for the NFC, obviously, I think the Niners are going to be dangerous. So I'm going to put the Niners in there, but I think it's really going to be either the Niners or the Lions. I'd be hard-pressed to see Philadelphia make the Super Bowl and win it. It's possible. I just think they suffered a lot of losses. And I got to be honest, I don't think this team – I might be wrong, bro, but I just feel like this team is kind of done with Sirianni. I feel like they're sick of his shit. I think it's something internal. Like on face value, they look good, but there's a couple like cracks in the armor that I think can ultimately undo them when they get deep into the season.
So that was definitely apparent last year, but I think these are things that they worked through this past offseason. I think that the change in coordinators had a lot to do with it. I think bringing in a Vic Fangio, who is a well-respected, highly touted mind into this building to kind of give Sirianni a little bit of like a reality check, a little bit of like an older figure to, kind of curb some of those things, I think will be beneficial to the Birds. And again, for the 1,000,000th time in the last couple of times we've done this show, I'm all on the Birds this year.
Yeah.
And I'm a Commanders fan, so this is no homer stuff. Like I just think the Birds are really good.
I think the one longer shot, if you could call it that, at 35-1 I think is Cleveland. That's probably the only longer shot that I would go. I don't like any of these teams right now. And obviously, listen, bro, like preseason, there's so many wrong things are said and things happen. And a team is better than you think they're going to be, or a team is not as good as you think they're supposed to be. And there's momentum built, and development happens quicker, and things happen. So, this is also preseason. And again, we're going to be looking to update our positions and stances as the year goes on.
Yes. And that's everybody should do. Again, not just a NFL future MLB. It's not just a betting thing. Like when you're presented with new, relevant information, have an open mind, process that, and eliminate some of your current biases and come into things you're currently thinking, and use that new information to help you formulate new, stronger opinions based on what's actually happening and not what you think is or should be happening.
Exactly. Next time, Friday, if we're still in, if you're available. If not, next Monday, we'll be talking some week 1 NFL lines. We pretty much did all our futures, and if we miss anything, we'll come gloss all over it. And pause. And we really appreciate everybody taking the time tonight to check us out. What our future picks for the year. So we'll see you soon, and best of luck.
Best of luck, everyone.